So good morning. My name is Frank. For those of you who don't know me, and it's my privilege this morning just to interview Joey and Jenny Pace, who are our youth pastors here at Coast Vineyard, and have been since 2008. And so it's been 13 years of you guys guiding the youth in our church. So yeah, just maybe as framing as we get started, we're in a series right now called "Why Are We Here?" And in this series as a church, we've been just asking ourselves, um, just what do we do? Like, why are we doing what we do here on Sundays? And so, in the past, we've talked about evangelism, we've talked about prayer, we've talked about children's ministry, and this morning we're going to talk about youth ministry. And just to give folks some framing is into what to expect, in next week, we're going to continue our series on Why Are We Here? We're going to be talking about home groups, and Marianne's going to be bringing us a message about home groups and how home groups integrate with the rest of the church function. And then the week after that, Sharon Velasquez is going to be talking about giving and the role of giving in our worship. So that's just kind of what to expect. But now I'm going to welcome Joe and Jenny. I guess, do you prefer Joey or Joe?
It's easier to
Joseph?
say Joe, but I've been known as Joey my whole life, so I've given up trying not to go by Joey.
Okay.
So it's one of those things where if you call me Joey or Joe, I'm going to respond. So, yep.
Hey,
Either way.
you. That works?
Yeah,
Okay.
sometimes.
Fantastic. All right. So I know that for both of you guys, belonging to a youth group, when you guys were young was also super important for you guys.
Yep.
So maybe just as just to kind of help set the stage for other folks to know kind of, how that played in as part of your lives. If you guys could just share a little bit about, what it was like being in youth group as you were growing up, what that meant to you, and how that was kind of integrated into your experience
Sure.
growing up.
Yeah. And these mics remind me like I'm going to take somebody's order at Burger King or they're cool, but yeah, they're fun. This is David's idea, by the way. I'd rather have a real mic. But now I don't know what to do with my hands, so if I start doing some weird stuff, that's why. Um, yeah, so I grew up in the Vineyard. I actually grew up in PB Calvary originally. So about the time when my parents had been divorced, I started at Calvary Chapel, Pacific Beach, under Don Absher. I was just a young guy, and then he turned that church over shortly after. Probably I want to say like maybe a year in to Gary Strickland, and it was still PB Calvary Chapel PB, and I was a little guy, and I was kind of like Daryl and Owen, and kind of running around, having a lot of fun, just happy-go-lucky. It was a really good time to be in PB. It was before all the tourists really moved in, and shortly after that, I remember, I think I was like 8 years old at that point, but we had been going to Twin Peaks, which is their retreat centers. And then I remember one time I came back, and the artist at our church, his name was Mike DeBro, he was painting this really cool mural. And I'm like, huh, and it had like grapes on it, and it said the Vineyard. And I remember me and a couple of my good buddies that had grown up in Calvary Chapel PB were like, what is this Vineyard? What is that? And it was like, oh wait, we just came back and we decided to be a vineyard now. And it's like, oh, we're gonna be a vineyard now. Like, what does that mean? Like, are we gonna like have wine? Like it was like very confusing time. And it was like, no, this is gonna be like Calvary, but with better music. Like these kinds of things. And so, I grew up with there. I mean, my church, it was here in San Diego and PB, and Alani Frisbee was there as well too. So it's like we were very much in the crux of the just coming out of the Jesus movement and into kind of what uh, you know this Calvary Vineyard movement was like right at the very beginning of it. And so yeah, it was immediately. I mean, I remember as soon as we became a vineyard, I think it wasn't much longer, we got really really big. And we grew out of our place in PB, and then they moved to Claremont, and then we had this big building in Rose Canyon, and we had so many people, like 3 services, huge kids ministry youth group, and I grew up in that youth group, um, and it was fun. I mean, it was just so much fun. It was like, um, I looked forward to youth group every moment. Looked forward to camps, and then Jenny started coming about when I was like 12, I think. She started coming to youth group, um, and so yeah. You want to talk about that or no? She'll take it from there.
For me, my grandma started taking me to Vineyard. Before that, we were at plenty of other different places, other churches, and then we stayed at Vineyard for a while. So it was kind of neat coming home. It was like a home to me. It became a home just because my home was so broken. I lived with my grandma most of the time. My mom was a single mom. So for me to be at youth group and to have other families that weren't broken around me was really important and really shaped who I was. And part of that was the youth group. Like the parents of the youth group would take us camping. They would take us, wherever they would go, we would all go. It wasn't just their family. They made it to where all of the youth would go, and that particular family really really had an impact on both Joey and I of why we love to be around people and why we love to have people like living life with us. It was just a different way that I had seen before because I had a mom that worked all the time and I was with my grandma most of the time. And so youth became my family. Youth became so important to me because it was like my lifeline. And then I think around age 16, my grandma moved to a different church and I stayed. So then it became my church for the first time. I didn't have to go with my grandma. I got to choose, and I chose to stay. And we couldn't afford camps, but other families in the church would pay for me to go to camp. So I looked forward to all the camps. The kids were great growing up. In that church, they all just loved being around each other, and this guy, I did not like him at first. Just to let you know, I would avoid him at every cost. We had two different ways into the youth room, and I would walk the other way if he walked one way, so I wouldn't have to say hi to him. So
it's hard to resist.
God has a sense of humor, but it was just impactful for me. I knew like that was my refuge in the chaos of school and the chaos of my family. I knew that was a solid place, and I relied in that. And so for me, youth was really important growing up.
Yeah, we have all really got to know Jesus through youth group. So I felt like up until youth group, it was like our parents, like you kind of said, and then at youth, it was like we really felt like we were going to change the world. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool, guys. Thank you for sharing. I think just as as you guys were sharing, I was kind of reflecting on my own experience, like in church and growing up, and kind of where are those places where where my faith started becoming my own, where are those places where I was able to kind of engage with people and outside of my own nuclear family, and to have those sorts of relationships. I think just as we kind of have been doing over the past few weeks, I should take a short pause to have a short breakout and discussion time. So if you want to find another group somewhere close around you, maybe these folks over here could be one group, and maybe we could do one group here and one group back there, and just kind of circle up, and just as a small group discussion, maybe if you grew up as part of a church or as part of a church youth group, what was that experience like for you? And for those of you who didn't grow up inside of a church or church youth group, did you have a place where you felt safe and accepted as a teenager, where you could ask questions or get support? And if so, what was that place and what was that like for you? So let's just take maybe, 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes, and just circle up and just, I think Rob's going to put the questions up on the screen, and just have a moment to share just kind of what your experience was like as you were a teen. Ready? All right. Hopefully that was a good opportunity just to reminisce about like what it was like, and just recall what it was like to be a teen for you. I'm going to guess probably some things that were good about those years, and other things that were probably a big struggle about those years. Um, I think as we kind of look into what does it mean, or what is the purpose of having a youth group in church? Maybe I'm going to turn it over back to you guys and just kind of ask, like, what would you say is the purpose of having a youth group inside of a church?
You want to take that one first, or
Yeah, I can.
go for it?
I think having another set of like adults in your life besides your parents, besides your teachers, that you can come to, that you can rely on, um, is important. The youth have so much to offer us as adults that it's nice for adults to get to a glimpse to see how they live and how they interact and worship, and so it's a beneficial for both adults and teens. And then you have the young ones who, look up to the teens, who look up to that, and so they're watching them as the teens are watching us adults. So it's kind of it's a neat thing to have. For me, it's important that they know that they can come to Joey and I and talk to us about anything, that we're going to be stable for them when the world outside could be so chaotic. Um, I love taking them. I mean, we haven't been able to do it that much lately, but like I love taking them to retreats, to conferences, camping. I miss all that stuff with them, but for me it's a joy to watch them just have fun and interact with other youth besides just their little youth. Like, so for me, I love taking them to other places that have a bigger youth group so that they can interact with them and say, "Oh, look, there's more teens that love to worship God besides just us."
And maybe for folks who, I mean, I'm going to guess some folks grew up in churches and went to youth retreats and youth camps, stuff like that, and other folks never did. That wasn't part of their childhood. Could you just maybe describe a little bit, like, what is a youth retreat, or what is a camping trip with the youth? What does that look like?
I could do that. It's not too much unlike an adult conference, aside from it's like way more fun. So, like, where adult conferences can be kind of chore-like and kind of like, all these meetings and this and that. It's more centered around towards things that's going to engage youth. So there's usually games involved. There's usually like slip and slides, water balloon fights, candy, lots of candy, coffee for the leaders, But yeah, it's very engaging, and it's not that it's a dumbed down version. It's just a more fun version of church. So I mean, kind of like the why have youth group. I don't really understand why we don't run church like youth group. Like, to me, big church is boring. That's why I never left youth group. I want to stay where it's fun. Like, why can't we play games before church? I don't understand this. So like, just think of like if you could design a conference that was less like an academic situation and more like a fun situation. That's what youth conferences are like. We actually went to the national conference in Ohio together, and by far my favorite speaker was Mike Pivolacci, and everybody else liked all these high academic guys. Mike Pivolacci was way more funny. He was way more fun. I would rather listen to him all day long than listen to people drone on about theological stuff. It's like some of that makes sense, but just experiential, like fun is a big part of it. Candy is the second part of it, and then of course adventure. Like, we do amazing races in the youth group, stuff like that. We would love to do it with a big church as a whole. I mean, I guess part of the reason of why a youth group is because like they are church is gonna look like. When I was in youth group, how we did church is how I want to do church. The youth is going to determine how they want to do church, and it's not going to be like how we do church. So, the group before me came from very organized versions of Christianity, such as like Catholicism, Lutheran, very established ceremonial stuff, and we bucked that trend, and then everybody else is going to have to realize that, like, hey, when we see the youth and what's important to them and what they like about church, that's probably what church is going to look like. So,
maybe to segue from that, into youth ministry here at Coast. When you think about youth ministry here at Coast, what things, maybe what values about youth ministry are most important? What values do you want to see kind of brought out here at youth ministry at Coast?
I mean, discipleship is huge. You know, it's like you want to see people really fall in love with God and fall in love with God that's relevant to who their friends are, everything else. Like, because I could tell everybody how to evangelize in the way that worked for us, but it's not going to land with the kids today. So, to facilitate an area that they can develop that, where they follow God and that it's relevant to their culture is huge. So I think that's one of the prime values is being relevant. And I think that's been not unlike previous generations of our faith, but it is constantly changing as to how that looks, right? And see, what are values? The values I just would see that love, like love of God. Fun is a huge value for me personally, but I think, I think that just an enjoyment of it. This shouldn't be like a chore. This shouldn't be like that kind of deal. It should be something that people look forward to doing, right? We should want to go to church. For me, youth group was, we didn't talk about it in the last question, but kind of relevant there too, is like, youth group was like an island for me in the week. We used to do midweek too. And it was like, I'd have to like slug through the world and then just to get to my friends that I really loved and who really loved me, no matter what. And then get back to Sunday. So I had these like islands in the week, and it was a big deal for me mentally as a teenager, I remember. So yeah, those would be some pretty good values, I guess.
It sounds like there's a piece in there where you're, you mentioned it. It's important to have fun, and one of the things that I kind of see, like when we're engaging the youth in a fun activity, is it helps the walls and the barriers to come down, and for them to actually come out and engage, like in a more authentic way, not to be so guarded and so like protective of, I need to behave, I need to have follow certain norms and rules, but there's a sense of like, hey, this is a safe place to just, break some social norms, be silly, be fun, do something, outlandish.
Yeah.
And I think, and then that kind of segues nicely into what you were saying, Joey, about that youth group was a place for you where you felt known. Like there's a sense of like, like you knew that you were loved. You knew that it was a place where you could be authentic and people were going to authentically love you.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely fair.
I don't know, Jenny, anything to add on values you'd love to see in youth group here at Coast?
Mine is loving others, not just within ourselves, but like going out and loving others, and knowing that they are loved, and that they can be silly, they can say some weird stuff, and we're gonna still love them, and we're gonna be here to guide them, because I'm not here to like tell them what to do. I'm just here to guide them and to pray for them.
Yeah, common misconception, we aren't like really second parents to your children. You have them way longer than us. We only get them for a few hours.
And maybe
in the discipline side, not in the
you're saying you're essentially deferring the discipline side back out to the parents.
Yes, parents, it's your responsibility to discipline your children.
So would you describe your role more like fun aunt and uncle?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be much more accurate.
Maybe as we've been talking about values for youth group here at Coast, and we talked a little bit about activities at camps and such. What does youth group on a Sunday look like here, inside of Coast's context?
Joey mostly teaches.
Oh yeah.
I've been stepping up teaching more and more now. But we usually go over there after worship. We go and we sit, and we've been going through Isaiah right now. And then we will ask some questions about it because we want them to be engaged in it. And then when the numbers are really low, we go to Churro Church.
Churro Church.
So we go
That's
and we
my
take.
idea. I coined this.
So we take them to get churros, and then we sit down there and have a little meeting, and a little like reading of the Bible. So.
It's a new movement. We're gonna go call ourselves Churro Church. We're gonna have huge numbers.
Of churros?
Who doesn't want churros? I mean,
And then when we're done, we ask them if they have questions, and then we'll answer them, and then we'll pray.
Mhm.
Sometimes we get done earlier before this, and sometimes we end later.
Mhm.
we've also gotten very familiar recently since we've been here with Old Town. So we go and check out. We've seen a few of the donkeys. We've seen the blacksmiths. We've basically done a tour of Old Town. We know where the pretzels are. If you guys need any advice on where to go for Old Town after church, come talk to us or the youth, and we'll gladly show you.
I guess as you guys have been adventuring out and then also engaging youth in conversations both about the Bible and about life and having open question time, what are some of the things that have surprised you about working with the youth?
I'm always surprised at how much. I mean, our church does some things really, really well, and especially with the youth. And something that I've always done, and this isn't just this current group, but groups past is like. So we've been doing this for a while, since 13 years, and so you see these kind of waves of kids that come through, and our church has been really good at loving each other. Like we really do it well. I don't feel like there's anybody that kind of gets like picked on or isolated. And even in my youth group, that wasn't always the case. So I'm always impressed with our community of the way that they care for each other, they love each other, they really genuinely want to see each other, all of them, you know what I mean? And they accept flaws and stuff. Like we really had, like when I was younger, I really had to get a lot of coaching from people that I looked up to on how to be, how to treat other people in some ways, you know what I mean? More so than this group. This group is like not. So I'm always surprised by that. I'm always surprised by the fact that there's not like this like cliquey kind of group, like the cool kids and the not cool kids and whatever else, you know what I mean, or the athletes and they just love each other. They play together. They don't care. And when we go to these big camps where there's bigger groups and you can kind of see more of what I'm talking about, it's like to them it's so foreign, and they just come right in and they shake it up because they love each other very well, and they'll be together the whole time. They won't like. When I used to go to youth camps and stuff, we would disperse to like our friends that we'd been looking forward to seeing for the past year or whatever else, and kind of hang out with them more, and then we would kind of give our group the seconds. It's different. Our group is like, we're together. You can be part of our group, and they're more of the attracting kids from the other groups. What surprises you, Dan?
Yeah, that surprises me too. Also, a lot of them, their willingness to pray for people that they don't know. That they'll go out. Some of them will go out of their comfort zone. For me, I never went out of my comfort zone when I was young. I like to be in my box. So as I've gotten older, I've started getting out of that box. But for me to see some of them do that, it's amazing.
Less churchy. I'm always surprised with how cool Star Wars still is and how relevant Star Wars still is. I have some of the best conversations about Star Wars with the current youth group and the ones coming up, your children. Frank?
They desperately want to watch Star Wars with you. So.
That's right. I can't wait.
And maybe, what are some of the things that we've kind of hit, I think I hear some of your excitement and some of the things that you've been surprised by, but what are some of the things that you were excited about that you see happening now, and some of the things that you're excited about that are coming up?
It's tough right now with COVID. It's kind of put a little bit of damper on the momentum, but just the things that I'm excited about it, like Jenny was touching on, their willingness to pray, their willingness to step out and even talk about things. Like Timmy's here, he's like probably the most vocal kid in our youth group, and he'll quickly talk all kinds of stuff with me, and about whatever lesson we're learning, and it's just great to see like the enthusiasm for the word, the enthusiasm for what can happen. But I think there's this, because of COVID, there is some challenges. Like, how do we go out and evangelize when we're isolating or, whatever else? And so, for me, I'm excited to see us coming out of these stages and how that's going to translate. I'm an extrovert, so to me it doesn't make a whole lot of sense being introverted and evangelistic. I'd like to see to be extroverted and evangelistic in a way, or at least have people that do that as part of it. So getting back to what we used to do, where we would go out into the streets and pray for healing and take big risks and do stuff that's like not as, I don't know, crazy as when you're older. Jamie tells a good story about how when he was in theology school, about that when he admitted that he was with the Vineyard, and I think it's just our movement in general, but it definitely translates to youth. Things I'm excited about was he said, I'm from the Vineyard, and my name is Jamie, blah, 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 blah. And then he went about his day, and then after class, like 3 of the people said, hey, I'm here because John Wimber prayed for me in a grocery store. And he said it was in a class of like 30 people maybe, you know what I mean, or 10, 20 people. He had like 2 or 3 people come up to him and say, excuse my memory, I'm trying to remember it, so Jamie, correct me later if you need to, but that these people had come to him and said John Wimber had prayed for them in a supermarket and had a word for them about healing or whatever else, and it was totally dead on, and that's why they're following Jesus and or pursuing a life in ministry at this theology school. He said he did the like math on it, and it was like crazy high numbers. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I would be excited to see that we continue on those traditions of like that are in the store, in the normal day-to-day lives, that these people are like, hey, I got a word for you. Let me lay some hands on you if that's okay with you. And then just start praying for people and seeing the ripple effect of that kind of ministry, where it's not this like, hey, how many people can we get to go to a conference? It's like, hey, when I go to the store today, I just got a word for a guy with a blue shirt on. Oh, there he is. Let me go pray for him. And just see what that does, because I think that's going to be pretty amazing.
We've done that stuff
Yeah.
with previous youth groups, where we've prayed and then we went out and looked for the people that they prayed about and got word about. And it was really, really neat to see them out of their comfort zone, praying for random strangers, and most of the time they were right on.
Okay.
So I would love to do that again with this current youth group and others, but COVID kind of puts a restraint on that. So I'm hoping that we can do that again, because that was really fun. And it was also fun watching them like squirm a little bit about it.
Yeah, definitely the people that are less comfortable. But yeah, to finish that thought, the math basically said that John Wimber must have been doing that a whole heck of a lot. Just, we see him, we remember him, those of us that were around when he was around, was, bigger than life kind of thing. But he basically just was in the stores every day praying for people. That was a big ministry.
All right, to Vaughn's after church.
Let's do it.
I think we kind of mentioned something to the effect of like you're the fun aunt and uncle for the church's youth. Maybe 2 parts. One, how do you see like your role in partnering with parents, and how can parents be partnering with what you guys are doing?
Oh, big time. I'll take that one actually, because I was also raised with a single mother, and so I had various surrogate fathers in my life, and they all were part of the youth group for the most part. They actually did stuff for the youth. They weren't youth leaders, but they just basically took us everywhere. Jenny kind of alluded to that. But I was like half raised by a Filipino family that just took us everywhere. All kinds of adventures. If their family's doing something, you were always invited. If you needed to stay the night, it was kind of common. Everybody stayed the night at their house, ate out of their refrigerator, went on family adventures with them, and
But also did chores.
Chores, yeah, you're required to chores. So basically how parents can partner with us is be a lot like our Filipino family that half raised me, and in some ways got involved with Jenny as well too. And it's very much so an open door. We don't want to be the people that are like tasked with like I was kind of making jokes about it, but like every once in a while somebody say, hey, can you talk to this person and discipline them, they're doing this and this. I'm like, oh, no, it's really not my place. Like I'll tell them about Jesus and do all that stuff, but you're gonna have to be the parent, and so partnering with us, like doing things with us and allowing for things to happen, those families that used to do that would be basically make a youth group work. So, I mean, if you're relying on a youth leader or a youth pastor who's already doing a whole heck of a lot just to get the normal foundational stuff done, to like make it also do all kinds of other crazy and great stuff that you can imagine for your children or what you would want for their youth group's experience to be, it just doesn't, it's not realistic. So the way that people can partner with us is, hey, volunteer to take our kids to the snow. We'll go with you. You know, volunteer to go to Yosemite National Park. We'll go with you. You know what I mean? Like it's of course we would like to have these opportunities, but for us to plan, facilitate, get all these things done on our own is it's just not realistic, and I have never seen it happen. But I have seen it happen when everybody is trying to do everything to make things amazing for everybody. So that's that. The other thing too is if you want to go to stores and pray for people, we'd love to have you do that for sure.
Worship nights. I want to see more worship nights.
Yeah.
The youth want to see it too. I think that would be, if we can facilitate it and someone comes and does it for them, we will host.
So it sounds like there's an open call for people who both, I guess, want to worship and also lead worship with the youth.
Yeah, we've been doing this for a while too. Like it's something that was pretty inspirational for us in this last retreat, was seeing Merrick and Sam kind of step up and lead. And me and Jen were like, whoa, maybe we could groom these guys. You know, like it'd be good to see people that are like interested in this kind of starting stepping into, you know, bringing them up into this. It'd be great.
It also helps because we're now older, and the youth like to go to younger, so it'd be nice to have another generation in there.
Yeah, the in-betweens.
Yeah.
Some college kids.
Awesome. I guess, you know, as we're kind of getting to the end of time, is anything else you'd like to share with us today about youth?
Yeah, you know, something that's often been brought up is like, we remember when we were in youth, it was like, there was a lot of, I would say the leaders, the guys that were leading were really in these like kind of, like, I don't know, they just drew a lot of lines in the sand. As far as like, you know, if you do this, then, you know, they made, even though they didn't say it like this is, if you cross this line, then it's like never coming back. So a big focus on us is that we never do that. We try to make it super accessible for them and their friends. We want their friends to come to Friday night. We do Friday nights, and be like looking forward to it. Not be like this, like, hey, it's going to be this like heavy pressure, churchy thing. We just make it super easy. Like, hey, come and be our friend. And then if you really like us, you know, we also get together on Sunday. You know, not like, hey, by the way, have you given your life to Jesus? Or like, hey, have you had, you know, sex outside of marriage? Or, you know, have you ever done drugs? And any of these, there's none of those like delineators of like lines in the sand of like, this is what it takes to become a Christian. And that rubs people wrong. Some people feel like those are required. And, you know, I'm not on board with that. So never have been, never will. It was another big one, was like whether or not you believe in evolution when we were kids, when we were in youth. It was like there's all these like lines in the sand that were basically, I mean, I can't tell you how many of our friends were like, I had sex before I was married, so I guess I can't be a Christian, you know. I don't think God really likes that. And yeah, we don't, you know, ever promote that kind of thing, but we never draw those lines in the sand. We just say, oh man, you know, that's, maybe we'll say something effective like, that's probably not what God really wants. It's not probably the best for you. You know what I mean? But like, hey, let's talk about that. We just redirect and focus on pointing them back towards Jesus. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of been more of our focus, is like pointing them towards Jesus, letting Jesus work in them on those kinds of issues and areas and touching points. But like, in the past, I wouldn't say this current group, but in the past we've had a lot of like pressure of like, you know, kind of drawing those lines in the sand again, and being like, well, yeah, we're just not going to do that. We're not going to draw the lines in the sand. We want to make coming back to Jesus easy. as easy as possible. So, and it's already tough enough. It's super hard to go through this life and not feel like normal kinds of like shame points. And so, um, we'll continually point people into Jesus and get excited about that stuff, rather than point areas of shame and being like, well, I don't know if this is going to work out for you. So we'd rather focus on the good, I guess.
Yeah, we've had the majority of our youth group. We had conferences. It was lines in the sand. You don't cross it, and when they crossed it, they never came back.
Yeah.
Because they felt like they couldn't. God wouldn't love them, and so we don't want the youth to feel like that. We don't want them to feel like they have to be perfect, because we can't be perfect. We don't want them to feel like if they do make a mistake that they can't come back, and that God won't love them, because that's not true. He will love them even through those mistakes. So it's really important for me that they know that no matter what, God's there, God has their back, God loves them.
Come back. And we've seen it with our youth. We've seen some people kind of choose different paths, and they feel like they can't come back, even if that's not saying stuff. And I feel like they can now. I mean, we've had talks with them now, and it's like coming full circle again. But you see it on the long play. One of the benefits of doing this for as long as we have is that you can kind of see it only come out the other end. And we've seen some people that have just been straight and narrow and faithful through the whole thing, and it's paying dividends for them too. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys just for sharing your heart for youth and your experience and your story along the way. I think what we want to do now, I guess, is just Q&A. If folks have questions for Joe and Jenny, happy to field some questions. Give us all of your hard ones or easy ones. And Rob, can people text questions from Zoom as well? They can. Excellent. Or chat them. Okay, let me answer that real fast, or repeat the question. So the question was, how many kids are currently in our youth group?
I think it's about 15 right now, right? Usually when we count it up, if you count Friday night. Friday nights we always get friends coming. So if we count the friends.
Between 10 to 15, depending on how many friends come.
Yeah. And that's about average. We have hit like 20 or 30. I tell the kids I'll either shave my legs, right, guys, or eat a goldfish if they get 50 kids. So they have lots of plans. Emmy is leading the charge to try to get 50 kids. Yeah. Sorry for the vegans. I'll eat a goldfish.
They picked it.
It'll be live, yeah. It'll eat a goldfish live. Dye my hair, that was the other one. Which is cool because I can shave it. They don't know that.
You have to leave it on for a little while.
Yeah, 2 hours. All right.
Other questions for Joe and Jenny? Things you've always been dying to know? Who shot first? Is it Han?
Definitely. Definitely Han.
All right, for all you Star Wars nerds out there. I guess just as we wrap up, and we're I think time in a bit. We just want to finish off just by praying for Joey and Jenny and the youth. And actually, I'm going to invite Wendy and any other prayer team folks who want to come up and lead a time of prayer for us.